Okay, very good. Thank you all for joining us today. Another good turnout, it looks like, for our calls. Thank you all for making some time. A number of things to update you on, but we have a very special guest speaker today, our state representative, 85th District, Ben Frederick. Ben has done incredible work representing the area, not just over the last 5 months during this crisis, but since he started. And has been especially helpful, though, for many individuals, many businesses throughout this time. I know many people who have been assisted by Ben as it relates to unemployment and other issues. So I can't thank Ben enough for all the great work that he has done during this crisis. But there are a lot of things happening right now that are very important. And Ben has not been on in a while, so I thought it'd be great to have Ben come on again and give us an update on everything that's going on. You probably saw a couple of emails from Ben that I passed along in the last few days on very relevant topics. So really timely, I think, to have our state representative on the call. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to turn it over here to Ben so he can give an update to everybody, and then we will jump right in. If anyone has any questions or comments for Ben, we'll open the floor up right away for him to answer those. So with that, our 85th District State Representative, Ben Frederick. Ben, the floor is yours.
Always a nice little pause in there as we unmute ourselves.
Yeah, you're good. We can hear you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on again. I appreciate the opportunity. Certainly be with you again. I know there's a lot that's happened even since our last chat together. One measure of just the intensity that we've seen of need in this district that I can share is that Craig on my team keeps a tally of those that we've dealt with unemployment, and we crested the 1,300 mark as far as individual cases in the House district here, which is Shiawassee and some portions of rural Saginaw, which is, as I've compared notes with other representatives, a high number. You know, as our area has been affected pretty severely, and we still have cases that are going back to the origins of the shutdown, believe it or not. I mean, there's still folks that are just having multiple problems where they'll get something fixed and then another thing will pop up. And I'm sure as you've seen yourself with morale in the workforce and the employees, this is touching every family still, touching lives. So we're navigating people through that. What I tell them is that, you know, once a case is active with us, we're going to stay with it until it's resolved, whether it's unemployment or any other State Department, like Secretary of State issues and things like that. We're really trying to provide some peace of mind. So even if we're not saying this is going to be resolved immediately, they know that they don't have to stay on the phone calling multiple times a day. And that by itself seems to help with well-being, just that we're going to stay on it until it's done. And Craig recently got married, some happy news. So he got married last weekend, and I'm happy for him. We can punctuate a year like this with joyful news, but he's just been doing a spectacular job on a lot of these cases that have been coming through my office. You've obviously heard about the federal action that the president took on a supplement to unemployment moving forward. It's not been defined how long that's going to be, but it's an additional $300 the way that the governor has structured it to credit things from our system toward what the state match would have been. So rather than the 400 that would have been there, it's going to be the 300 with the state receiving prior credit for stuff that's already been expended from our accounts. Our formalization of that legislatively is happening this week. So for those that are having questions or wondering of the timing on that, that's going to be formalized this week. I expect it'll be put into the system fairly quickly for those that are still making claims. One piece of bright news that came up, I don't know if I mentioned it during the SEDP annual meeting so specifically, but I actually heard for the first time from our department that does procurement, that internally their estimation is that we have all of the personal protective equipment availability or inventories that we would need for the foreseeable future without having to go to outside sources. So that's a tremendous milestone to reach as a state. It's a reflection of many on this call who either networked or themselves converted some of your capacity to the development of PPE inventories. And as a sign of the times, we all know what PPE means. Many of us might not have known what that was before March. So that is now something that we don't see as an emergent need anymore, certainly, and have not really for a while. But it was kind of officially made known that we have internally the inventories that we need. And I'm glad to hear that. I think that there's a question to be asked here as we're learning from this process. Moving forward, why shouldn't Michigan be a supplier for the country, given our industrial capacity and our workforce for medical equipment of all types? I think that we, standing on our own and doing these things ourselves, it's a reminder to us to have some resilience and some domestic production capability. And I just appreciate those locally, really, in this area that led the way on that, because while they were still setting up the state level stuff, and it clearly seems that the stockpile vagaries caught us off guard as a state. Locally, things were happening very quickly, and we were actually able to layer in to the state process. And what we saw from Shiawassee County in particular became a model for how the state procurement started to interact with other agencies. So again, people on this call were a big part of that. I did send out, and Justin kindly shared information about a grant for certain facilities. These are toward more the healthcare field, like dental facilities, outpatient, long-term care, dialysis, emergency, certainly, pharmacies, funeral directors, mortuary, child caring institutions, supervised independent living. This vein, there's a grant that's been announced that has a deadline of September 8th toward PPE purchase or reimbursement, actually going back to March 1st. So this is a fairly impactful grant depending on the classification of the employer. It's up to $1,000 per frontline FTE in one band of employers, and then up to $2,500 per frontline worker for another band. So expected PPE cost for 90 days per frontline FTE is kind of the benchmark. But the time-sensitive nature of it is just demanded by the fact that applications are due September 8th. Justin has sent out that information already, but if he would, Justin, I'd ask you to do that again after the call so that they can get, the link is right there. It's a one-pager with a link on there as well. One thing that was a positive that we were dealing with in the state that was really kind of a dark forecast was the upcoming budget. And we were anticipating initially up to a $3 billion shortfall in that budget. It's positive in the sense that we have a more manageable shortfall, but of course, in the larger picture, it's still propped up by borrowing on the part of the federal government. But as a result of federal spending coming to our state, the shortfall is now anticipated to be $1 billion versus $3 billion, which is far more manageable as we're already adjusting to mid-year shortages that we had to account for and entering into a contentious time just generally, that we are able to look at that as a more manageable deficit to meet and prioritize some of our areas. I think that we certainly can prioritize some areas for changes and reductions. If you look at the tact of state spending over the last 20 years, we've gone up as a budget from $40 billion to $60 billion in that 20 years. So the idea that we can't look at that $60 billion budget and find $1 billion at a time when families are making very difficult choices as to their own budgets, that doesn't hold a lot of weight for me. So I think that we're going to be able to very much be able to manage that in a reasonable way to move our budget forward. That's going to be a key focus this month, certainly for the legislature. A focus moving forward on the policy side that I know is of interest to many on this call has to do with the concept of employer liability protection. The idea of having something in place that clearly create some reasonable boundaries against wrongful lawsuits, frivolous lawsuits, when employers are working in good faith to navigate this difficult time and all the varied regulations and the governor's often contradictory executive orders, as we've seen, that there's a reasonable allowance for liability protection. We did pass a bill related to medical healthcare workers' liability protections. Sadly, the governor did veto that, but it did start this process and discussion about the fact that certainly myself as legislator and many others see the idea of liability protections as a key need moving forward as we try to get past this chapter, but also acknowledge the very unique situation that we're in. Acknowledge that there wasn't a lot of guidance. In some ways, there still isn't. There was a lot of interpretation that was left to the individual. They were going to manage their operations, and that just needs to be accounted for, while still having reasonable assurance that there'll be the availability of. Obviously, people can bring forth litigation on things that are negligent or intentional, things of that nature. It kind of goes without saying. But for those that are, good faith situations, you'll see that as a key thing that's moving forward. Probably wrapped up into some type of negotiation. That's the way these things tend to go. But that's something that I know we're going to be seeing more of. On general sense, as a legislator, those that may have been following over the last several months will know that it's been kind of like a broken drum for me, that the thing I'm trying to get to with the governor is some degree of certainty in the plan that she's proposed or put out that really has not provided certainty to define the benchmarks for how we finally start talking about moving to phase 5 again, what that looks like, when, anything that we can do to bring some clarity to people, because to me it seems that the one of the most crushing things we've got is that uncertainty that's just dragging people down, their morale down, and just makes this seem like this never-ending situation. And I believe we've moved from a place of emergent conditions to one of ongoing management. And so there's an ability to come forward as communities and bring more voices into this process than we've seen up to this point. So that's going to continue to be my emphasis as we think about how we manage this moving forward, taking it seriously, and also making sure that we are bringing forward stories about how people can operate safely and sensibly and in a reasonable way. So I'm glad to be with you again. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this update, and I'm certainly here for any questions that you may have. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Ben. I have one or two, but I want to open up the floor as promised to our listeners here, and we have a good turnout today. If you have any questions or comments for Ben on any item, please hit *6 on your phone. *6. Does anyone have anything for Ben?
Justin, it's Mark.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Ben, a couple of things. You and I talked in the past about the ability to get rid of this 1945 bill that gives the governor power that is probably a little too much. But also, yesterday the CDC released a statement stating that there was a tremendous amount of these deaths that were attributed to other things, not COVID, even though COVID was involved. Are you guys going to move forward and try to find out how accurate our numbers really are?
Well, I appreciate the questions. On the first question, the update on kind of the 1945 law, the main update on the legal side is that the state Supreme Court's starting arguments on the 9th of September. So we've kind of gone through this appeal process all the way to the state Supreme Court now, which was the initial goal. And we were kind of disappointed that the state Supreme declined to accelerate that process. So it out to now September as we're looking at this. But that's the update on that side. Obviously, the initiative is another thing that people are doing that's gotten a lot of signatures in a very short period of time, I think a record period of time. They just announced they passed 300,000 signatures last week, and that's a record amount of time for that. So there's a lot of interest in in looking at how we can, bring some more voices in, restore what many see as the balance of power between these two branches. As you enter 6 months into a declared emergency, at what the transition from an emergent condition to ongoing management, as I said before, I'd argue we've reached a point where we can do ongoing management with more voices. As far as the CDC thing, actually, that really didn't come as much of a surprise to me, because you look at the United Kingdom already had information out about their demographic cases, and it parallels many of these situations. If you have inflammation-based conditions such as type 2 diabetes or things that are part of the metabolic syndrome, that you're going to be more vulnerable to COVID or any type of disease. And it had the average age, as 70 plus, and some of these things that I think that should not be a surprise to many people, because that's kind of what we're at. But it does beg the question of why we didn't have a larger emphasis on health and wellness throughout this. That's been something that's been disturbing to me, and I've made comments about that in the past as we're talking about isolation and just having what you do just be not doing anything. The reality of it is there are ways you can fortify mind and body to an extent on some of these items and improve your chances. And then there's a reasonable, statement to be made that there's certain population groups that are highly vulnerable that obviously do need additional intensity. As far as, this information's coming out now, without relief on the 1945 law. I don't know that it changes much from the procedural side, because we've had other information that's come forward and it's not really affected the strategy. Again, my big goal would be to have the governor define her plan so that the plan would be dictating decisions on next steps based upon metrics and the actual defined data. That has not happened. This to me is just one more point that I think argues for more sensible consideration of what is safe versus unsafe, and that's what I'll certainly be pushing.
Thank you, Ben. Mark, did you have any follow-up on that?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Along that point, Ben, thank you for bringing that up. That was one of the things I wanted to talk about. Obviously, I'm a personal believer in fitness. I've advocated for gyms reopening, but I want to credit you. I know you had my trainer, Brianna Carroll, testify last week in front of a committee. I think that got some great coverage, was well received. I don't know if it had anything to do with it, but we heard yesterday that it sounds like there might be an announcement from the governor on reopening gyms, movie theaters, other indoor facilities. Do you have any other knowledge you can share that might add to that?
Well, that's kind of the reality of the landscape right now. No, I don't. You see, that's the thing that's kind of distressing. I wish I could provide updates from the internal policy process, but I can't, because we're all learning things together as they're kind of announced from the central office or leaked from the central office, as this seems to have been. It's, having these things in a piecemeal way is difficult. I'm glad to see it, certainly. But to say to a business owner like Brianna, as one example, who was showing me multi-page safety protocols, months ago, and been on our website for months for people to see. I think there's been some broad brush assumptions made. I think there's people that are in that policy decision role in the executive branch that are looking at theaters and thinking about packed houses, or looking at gyms and thinking about a packed gym. And I don't know why that bridge hasn't been made to looking at gyms as how can a gym safely operate? How can a theater safely operate? So folks that are unlucky enough to be in those certain sectors, bowling alleys is another one, dance studios, they've felt left out, and they've gotten increasingly frustrated. They've seen other activities that casinos and other things being opened, and they're actually in some cases promoting wellness, promoting fitness directly, and they're not even given a chance to say, I can operate safely. And on top of that, they've actually followed the process that the administration's asked, and that they've set up these committees and they've submitted their plans, in some cases 3 or 4 months ago, and there's just been no response. I think that's part of the frailty of a centralized response. Is it's kind of what they can get to when they can get to it, rather than having more voices in the room and more ways that this could flow forward. And to me, it's a general question of phase 5 as much as just looking at certain industries. And we haven't been talking about phases since 4th of July, practically, you know, so there's that feeds into this lack of hope that a lot of people are experiencing right now. It seems rather arbitrary. But Brianna was a wonderful ambassador for the area. She did a great job in committee. The committee responded very favorably. We have an oversight committee in Lansing that's bringing these stories forward. And she asked very reasonable questions about why she can't be given the opportunity to serve her patrons safely, with the realities of changing weather coming too. And I think about the seniors that have been isolated for months as well, and why we haven't reached a point of having any kind of conversation about reasonable visitation policies, as I've heard from folks in our area even, that dementia is accelerating. I heard one direct quote that memory care is, quote, devastated. I mean, our seniors are fading away, and that's an unspeakable tragedy. So getting to that point where we can have these conversations and actually get something done is what we need to get to as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Ben. Other comments or questions for Ben? If you do, please hit *6 on your phone to unmute yourself. *6. Anyone have anything for Ben?
Justin?
Yeah, go ahead.
Mark Falks, Perry Township.
Mr. Supervisor, thanks for joining.
Mr. President, yes. I just wanted to say hi to Ben and just reach out. And at Chi-Town Park tonight is our MTA meeting, and he may know about it. He probably got an email on it at 7 o'clock.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, and sounds like hopefully we'll have a good meeting. They had a good meeting the last month when we had it well, it was I think it was in June. I'm not sure when we had it last, but okay.
Very good. Thank you,
And,
Mark.
Appreciate the comments today too, Ben.
Thank you. Other comments or questions for our state representative? Hit *6 on your phone, please. Anyone have anything else? Okay. Well, Ben, thank you as always for participating on our call and for all the great work you do representing Shiawassee County in the 85th district. You know, please keep sending me information. We'll keep sharing that with our contact list.
Thanks very much. Glad to be with you.
Thanks, Ben. Take care. Okay. Great update from Ben. I did want to share a few other items for you on the call today. Very excited to let you know we are bringing back our monthly member coffee. So many of you remember before COVID hit, we were having monthly updates here at the Armory in the basement. We did half-hour updates with coffee from Foster and donuts provided by Agnew Graphics, just to give everybody an update on what was happening in the economy and really create an opportunity for business-to-business connections. And while we have a lot of businesses on the phone today, it really doesn't lend itself well to networking with each other. So we have made a decision to reconstitute those. And in order to be observant of the governor's rules, we are actually going to bring them back for the time being in person, outdoors at a park. So we're actually finalizing that right now. We're targeting next week, actually next Thursday morning for that. It looks like hopefully we'll be able to do that at the same place we had our annual meeting, which was at the Park Pavilion there in Corunna. At the softball fields. So we're trying to lock that in, but it's going to be next Thursday morning, 10 a.m. So once again, the purpose is to focus on what's going on in Shiawassee County's economy, talking about some of the projects we're working on, but also give people the opportunity to connect with one another and do B2B work. So hopefully we'll have a good participation. We were getting about 20 to 25 people every month for that before. So hopefully some of you are ready to get back out and would like to participate in that. A couple of other items, the small business grants, those will be announced this week. We did our work, completed that last week. We were waiting on some other partners in the I-69 thumb region to get done. That work has been completed. So those who applied for the Small Business Restart Grant through the MEDC, those announcements should be coming out this week. So stay tuned on that. But very excited. We're going to get a substantial amount of money into the hands of Shiawassee County small businesses to help them through this difficult time. So there was that. I also want to let you know on the HR side, a couple of items. One you've heard about already, one is brand new. The one you've heard about, we have a partnership with our Small Business Development Center. Janice Mueller, Cheryl Peterson, many of you know them. They've done a great job representing us during this time. They got some stimulus money to be able to help provide HR consulting. So we've added a connection there, Mark Rideout, who is available to help with strategic HR. Many of you on the call are struggling with attracting and retaining talent. It's the number one issue we hear about. Mark has a few decades of experience in helping companies figure out how to position themselves to attract and retain talent. So he is available for free consultation for businesses that need that type of assistance. So this is normally something you'd have to pay for, but you get it free because of the stimulus money. So that is something that we're definitely trying to pitch. So we've got one company we've already talked to. We've got 3 more we're going to talk to this week. If your business wants to talk talent, would like some guidance, some outside input, please let us know. We will get you in touch with Mark. The other item that's brand new that we're very excited about from our friends at the Detroit Regional Partnership, they are working with a group that is specifically focused on placing adults who are somewhere on the autism spectrum into employment situations, specifically in the area of technology. So for business, any business that has tech jobs, software, IT, cybersecurity, you name it, they are working to do that. Apparently, they've studied our region. Only 8% of the people that are somewhere on the autism spectrum are employed, that are adults. So they are working hard to try to support that target population. So if any business on this call would like to connect with them and learn how they might be able to partner for hiring, please let us know. We're actually going to have a call next Tuesday afternoon, I believe, at 4 o'clock for anyone that would like to participate. I'll send out an email on that. So please take a note on that. But if you'd like to participate, let me know. And then I'm just going to close again with talent. Got some great economic news came out yesterday. Shiawassee County's unemployment rate has dropped substantially again. We peaked out at 29.1% unemployment. We are now down to, I believe, 8.6. So that's great news. People are going back to work. However, we know, once again, many of you are trying to hire. You're struggling to get talent, people to stay in the job. So if you do need people, please let us know. We're trying to connect you to different resources like Mark Rideout. We have some marketing media opportunities that are out there as well. So if anyone needs talent, please stay in touch with us. We can connect you to some good resources. So with that, that is all I had for today. I appreciate everyone joining us. I'll do one final call out. If anyone has anything for me, please hit *6 on your phone. Does anyone have any last minute questions? Okay, well, thank you all for joining us. We will be back on the call next Tuesday morning. However, please know we will have our member coffee next Thursday morning. So look for an invitation on that here shortly, and hope you all have a great week. Thanks, everybody.